Welcome back. Gore Vidal, I think by anybody's standard, is a brilliant writer. And his latest novel is probably the most ambitious and stimulating of his works he's yet written. It's called Creation. And Gore always has a few things to say about almost anything. Would you welcome Mr. Gore Vidal?
Thing, but what makes me uneasy here are those ficuses, those green plants. One of the best kept secrets of show business is a famous night. There used to be a writer called Truman Capote.
Oh, yes.
Small and round. And one night in an interview, sitting in this chair, a carnivorous ficus back there ate Truman Capote. And they had to keep the camera on Johnny here, who was looking over the shoulder, and there was no Capote after the end of this. He has never been seen since. Not quite it was a Venus flytrap, I suppose.
That is
I always look back there and I say to myself, could it be the night of the carnivorous ficus?
He's lurking back there again to seek his prey.
As it were.
How have you been? Nice to see you. You're a very deductive person. You have great powers of logic. A lot of people think we were making this up about the hats. Did you follow that explanation at all? Because I had a great problem with it, to be very honest with you, when I first saw it, and I couldn't quite put it together without going through it many, many times.
I sort of thought it like the Ronald Reagan game plan for the economy. It seemed to me like cutting $30 billion from everything and then adding $60 billion to the military budget. That's about the way I looked at it.
You're the only man who could take 3 derbies and turn it into the Reagan's administration and find some kind of segue into that.
Exactly. Well, no, I like those hats. Are you wearing them? No, they're not wearing them.
No, we're not wearing them. Listen, before we get to your book, which I have started, how do you do your research? I am amazed because you are a historical buff. Julian and Burr were historical novels. You obviously can't do all of this research yourself.
I do it all by myself. Really? It takes forever. And what I try to do is write a book that nobody else has written that I would like to have read had somebody else written it. And I didn't believe that American history could be as boring as I was taught in school. So I took some years off and I wrote Burr. So it might still be boring to some people, but I found it very interesting to write. And I've never been able to figure out Buddha. I've never been able to figure out Confucius. I don't know where they were. So I spent 6 years writing Creation. And it's slightly irritating to me that what has taken me 6 years, somebody can read in 2 or 3 days and know as much as I know about it. You know, I sort of feel like an open-ended tunnel here. I pour the books in my head and only a single book comes out. No, I think you just write books that you yourself wish somebody else had written.
Please, you shall.
And I think one of the problems with so many books and movies and other things, people make movies or do TV or write books that they themselves would never think of reading or looking at.
I think you're probably right.
I think we're faced with that right now on the San Andreas Fault. There's a lot going on that nobody did that they really wanted to do.
You said you found history rather boring. Did you have little patience with schooling?
Oh, I was bored. You know, I graduated from a very good school in New England when I was 17. The Second World War was going on, and I enlisted in the Army as a private, and I never went back to school. I said, after 3 years of the Army, I said, no institution will ever hold me again. I was never so bored, and I've now got to go back to the school, which will be nameless. It's the Phillips Exeter Academy in New Hampshire. And I'm going back to school. And I'm going back to New Hampshire in May to talk to them. I'm spending a day. I haven't been back since I graduated.
Oh.
And I'm going to try to explain to them why, after going to Exeter, I never wanted to go to another school. I think this... I may have my work cut out for me, but they are New Englanders. They understand this.
Speaking of the title Creation, not a news lately. The fundamentalists, the creationists versus the evolutionists. I think, I may be wrong, but I think this week Arkansas was the first state, I think, to pass a law that makes it mandatory now to teach
the Garden of
creation in school along with the theory of evolution. How do you see that going?
Well, I think it's, about once a generation, the fundamentalist Christians swing down from the trees, and the last big event they did was in 1919 when they gave us prohibition. Now they're swinging down again, and I think they'll cause some disturbance, but they're only about 1% of the population feel like this. Most Christians are not so violent on the subject. But I think if they want to have school books that say that there's the Garden of Eden, no evolution, they should have them. Then when the kids cannot go to MIT or become doctors and lawyers, then they'll think maybe we better study some other books. But if you're going to teach the Garden of Eden, I think out of sheer parity, you've got to teach Buddha, you've got to teach Confucius, you've got to teach Socrates. There are about 500 other religions just as good or just as bad, just as entertaining.
And maybe just as valid.
And just as valid. So why should any minority decide that it's going to tell the majority of the country, my little religion is going to be the national religion? This is not a Christian country, nor a Jewish country, nor an Islamic country. This is a secular society, which does not mean Bob Guccione and Penthouse, but a society of law and not of religion. So I think that anybody who tries to impose his religious beliefs upon other people is heading for a great deal of trouble. And I think they're going to find themselves in the courts.
Could happen. How do you feel about, it's also happening along with that local communities are saying now, we will not allow certain books in our library. And what always bothers me about that, I think communities have a right, I suppose, to set their own standards. What always bothers me about that is who are these people who choose the books?
Well, what's I think so wonderful about the book burners, the people who are always burning books are those who are absolutely incapable of reading one. And they have a great sense of anger and resentment when they see somebody holding this thing of cardboard and paper with these little funny black dots on it, turning it happily and not moving their lips. They say, these must be bad people, probably communists going to overthrow the country. So let's burn the books and then we won't have ideas, and because ideas are dangerous as they lead to thoughts. I think there's a very strong, this kind of thing has always been going on in the United States, and we always tamp it down, but I think now they're raising a lot of money and they're intruding in elections. One way to handle them, of course, is I would, if I were in charge of things or able to get a majority in Congress to go along with it, I would tax every single religion. Now, once you tax them, every time you see one of them come on, now I'm going to tell you now, you're going to send me that check. I want that check now. Jesus wants that check. You send that check to me. Jesus is right here. Jesus is waiting for you. I want that check for $500. Now I want that check right. Okay, everybody can hustle a buck. Let him hustle the buck. But then I want the IRS to be standing right beside him, and I want him to pay, because religion is tax exempt. This is the murder these guys get away with. And I want the IRS to take his money away the way they take my money away, and your money away, and your money away. Then we'll see fewer of them.
You may be right. You may be right. We'll take a break. We'll be right back. We're talking with Gore Vidal and Peter Strauss. I read from time to time in the papers that you may be entertaining the thought, and we've discussed this before, of getting into some political life, possibly running against our junior senator. I always love junior senator when I talk about Senator Hayakawa, who's 74. But
well,
is that a possibility?
Well, it's
realistic possibility.
Realistic, I don't know. He's a serene old gentleman, and he's been very quiet in Washington. And a lot of people seem to want to take his place. He seems very gallant. He wants to return to office. But it'll be a curious year. Barry Goldwater Jr. is supposed to be out there on the Republican side, and the president's daughter, Maureen Reagan, and the governor of our great state of California, Jerry Brown, is very interested in doing it. So I don't know. Naturally, I feel humble thinking that I might be sitting in the seat of George Murphy, who had been the senator. I can't tap dance.
You were not, not wearing that humility too well.
No, and I feel, very inferior to the President of the United States, who can read cue cards like nobody's business. I mean, well, when he starts in, and it's always the Brim coffee commercial that he's giving directly to us, our president, who come to the state, I feel humble. I don't read these cue cards that well, and I get them backwards, and so I don't know, but
don't think the image is there.
I don't know, but I think in bad times attract thoughtful candidates. And if you can survive the money thing, I mean, it's $2 million to go into the Democratic primary for Senate in this state. Well, that's obscene, and I don't.
You're just talking about a state basis, not national.
That's national. That is even the campaign after that. And I think that's a disgusting waste of money. One way around that would be, which I've always felt, to limit elections to about 6 or 8 weeks and and make it impossible for any candidate or any political party to buy time on television. That cuts the cost right there. Let the networks and the local stations give free time, pro bono publico, for the 6 or 8 weeks of the election. You might get even better candidates. You might get candidates who actually didn't have to read the cue card, but might be thinking as they spoke.
Yeah, the electoral process is way too long. They start running way too long. Now, realistically, knowing you,
Yes.
I don't think you really could engage in what somebody in public office has to engage in, and that is a lot of compromise. That is keeping quiet when you really want to say something else. I can't see you doing that.
Johnny,
I remember when Bill Buckley ran for mayor of New York, and I think Bill knew that he really didn't have a chance, but he ran for it because he says what's on his mind, and that sometimes does not sit well with people.
I think that's quite true, but you know, I find that I have depths of insincerity as yet unplugged.
You have not even tapped into that
I haven't
yet.
even tapped my insincerity. I think that I could absolutely take anybody in the state with that, just with a placid smile, as these things roll past. No, you're quite right that you would obviously end the whole game if you said exactly what you thought
absolutely.
about almost anything. But maybe that's what's needed, and it might be interesting to see what would happen. So I'm very tempted, and if anybody wants to give me the $2 million, you just we'll leave an address.
You'll accept it, I suppose.
Yes, I would rather have it in one lump sum, because then I can invest it all at once.
And in cash only.
Yes,
of
and
course.
if I don't run, you'll understand that I've always liked Tahiti, and
No, it'll never work. You're too honest. I would get out of this race right now and forget the whole thing. We have just about a minute or so. You going to be in our environs for some time now, or?
oh, I'm in the environs, except that nowadays when you publish a book, they expect you to travel. So
That's
I'm
right.
going to Texas and to Toronto and all around the country, radiating goodwill.
Well, I'm glad you came here and radiated tonight. The book is fascinating, called Creation. I thank you for being here, Gore.
Thank you, John.
Peter, we'll look forward to seeing Masada, which comes on in April. I think the first night is
April 5th, 6th, 7th, and 8th.
April 5th. I hope it's a big hit for you.
Thank you.
Thank you. We'll see you tomorrow night. I'm humbled by that applause.